Back when I had negative perceptions of my body, I always was finding flaws with it, no matter how much weight I lost or how fit I became. As someone who spent many of my younger years binging diet and fitness YouTube videos, I can honestly tell you I did not learn much. What this means is that how you look is not a true indicator of how healthy you are. Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about something that is considered quite personal and vulnerable, but I have no reservations talking about it because I know it's an issue that many of us struggle with in private, and ignoring it or sweeping it under the carpet is not going to help it go away. So that's why today I want to talk to you guys about how I came to realize that my relationship with food, my body, exercise was actually really unhealthy, and how I learned over a long period of like 9 years to finally rewrite the scripts in my head around how I should or should not look like. Before we start anything at all, let me clarify that this video is not about how to lose weight or gain muscle or change anything about the aesthetics of your body at all. But rather, this video is more about learning how to identify some of the dysfunctional beliefs that you might have around your body and what it should or should not look like, and some of the mindsets that might help you to start letting go of this desire to change your physical self. I do want to emphasize though, I think even though I'm personally at peace with my body now, I'm not saying that this will be the case forever. Having healthy body image is not something that you just have or don't have. I think it's something that you must constantly work on every single day. Before I get into some of the mindset shifts that really helped me see my body in a different light and develop healthier body image, I'm going to share a bit of a background on myself just to contextualize some of the tips that I'll be sharing. I grew up in an Asian family in Singapore where there was always a lot of talk about weight. If I gained some weight or I lost some weight, I knew for a fact that the next time I saw someone, they were probably going to comment on it. My family members commented on my weight, on their own weight, on other people's weights. So I think it really instilled this idea in me from a very young age that there are certain body types that are more ideal than others. A lot of the women in my family also went on diets quite a lot, so that also perhaps influenced my view on how food can be controlled in order to reach those desirable outcomes. None of that really affected me up until I was around 14 and 15. I went to an all-girls secondary school, and I was in an extracurricular activity that required a lot of running and exercise. So a lot of girls around me just started losing weight. And I have no idea why, but I think I started feeling compelled to do the same. I don't know whether it was because I was comparing myself to other girls or whether it was because I was an overachiever at school, so losing weight was just another accomplishment that I could rack up. But I lost a lot of weight. This was really the first time that I started to constrict my food intake. At the point that I was the most restrictive, I would have an apple, some biscuits, and maybe a piece of bread with diet jam for lunch and breakfast. And that was all I would eat up until dinner. And it really wasn't enough considering the fact that I was exercising between 4 to 6 times a week. And I was also a growing girl. I remember being hungry all the time, going to bed hungry, but I kept going because I saw the weight dropping off and people kept commenting on how good I looked. So anyway, fast forwarding a year or two, I obviously couldn't keep eating like this because it was just way too little. So I started eating regularly sized meals again, and lo and behold, I gained weight. And now that I look back on it, I think it was weight that I definitely needed to gain. As I said, I was really active and I was not nourishing myself physically, but I felt so guilty at that time for putting on that weight. I was so set on this idea that I had to get back down and lose all that weight that I had gained. And honestly, it took me a good 5-6 years to really let go of that mindset. Along the way, I dealt with symptoms of binge eating, of body dysmorphia, of orthorexia, of exercise addiction. I also lost my period and I found a way to get it back. I think if I went into every single detail of my health journey, we would be here for at least an hour. But my point is, I've really been there and back with my health. I really put my body through a lot of shit. But I needed to go through all of that in order to get where I am today. And boy, am I so grateful that I am where I am today. I'm so grateful that I don't think I'm fat because I can't see my ribs. I'm grateful that a little bit of weight gain during the holiday period doesn't bother me anymore. And I'm grateful that I can go a couple of days or even weeks without exercising and not feel guilty. Am I the healthiest I've ever been in a physical sense? Maybe not, but emotionally and mentally, I am leaps and bounds better. And I know that it's only from this place of self-love and contentment that I can make genuinely and objectively wiser decisions that are actually healthy for my body moving forward. So for the next half of this video, I'm going to be sharing some mindsets and habits that I had to change or adopt to develop a much more balanced view of health. The first thing that I want to remind you is that body image ideals are social constructs, aka they're made up. They're not real. There is no definition of a perfect body. And I don't just mean this in a self-love sense, but literally, it doesn't exist. That's because what beauty is and what weight signifies to society is fluid and ever-changing. And this is where history really puts things into perspective. Did you know that all the way up to the 1900s, the ideal woman's body type was portrayed as curvy, full-figured and voluptuous? Being bigger was associated with being more affluent, healthy, and of higher social status, while being thin meant that you were unhealthy and that you were poor. For example, the American actress Lillian Russell, who was one of the reigning sex symbols in the early 20th century, was 200 pounds or 90 kilograms. Perspectives only started to change in the 1930s with celebrities like Marilyn Monroe and supermodels like Kate Moss making images of thin and lean women more mainstream. And then in the 2000s onwards, we have the Kim Kardashians, we have the weightlifter aesthetic, and overall more diversity in body types of all kinds. And of course, things don't just differ temporally, but also spatially. In Singapore, my body size is considered pretty much average, but in the States, I was considered petite. And even when I gained weight, I was still a lot smaller size than a lot of other people in the population. I think going overseas to study really drove home to me how weight is really arbitrary. Clothing sizes are also arbitrary, right? Because I can be an S here, but I can be an XL over there. Aspiring to look like someone else is quite pointless because in 50 years' time, my body type could be considered ideal and hers might be less attractive. I'm not saying that with this knowledge, all of your negative thoughts about your body type will go away, but I'm just saying, reminding yourself of how arbitrary all of these things are over and over might really help to reprogram some of the beliefs that you have about fitting into a certain size or trying to achieve a certain body type, as it did for me. So here's an action step that you can take. Think about some of your body's insecurities. Ask yourself, what do I believe I should look like instead? Where did that belief come from? How could I choose to think differently about your insecurities? My second tip is to start prioritizing your health and well-being instead of your looks. The World Health Organization defines health as being in a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. What this means is that how you look is not a true indicator of how healthy you are. What you weigh, how much muscle you have, and all these other health metrics, these are not true indicators of your health, your happiness, your relationships, or your mental state. When I was at my smallest weight, I was not satisfied. When I was at my most muscular, I was also not satisfied. I spent so much mental capacity fretting over how I should look like and how I should get to my perfect weight or perfect body type that I compromised my own emotional and mental well-being in the process. And not only that, sometimes I would do things like over-exercise to the point where it became unhealthy for my body, resulting in things like injury. The thing is, what one person needs to be healthy is completely for what someone else needs to be healthy. One person who's obese might genuinely need to lose weight to prevent the risk of disease. Someone else who's just been injured might need to rest for a couple of months so that they can recover properly. What we need to be healthy is so unique to our specific body and circumstances that there is no point comparing what we do in terms of food and exercise to other people. There's also no point comparing how you look with how someone else looks because you have no idea how healthy they are on the inside. Instead, I think we should always be striving towards being the healthiest version of ourselves. I want to highlight a YouTuber here called Stephanie Buttermore, who I think is the perfect example of someone who did what she had to do in order to be her healthiest self, even though it was considered out of the norm. I really recommend, especially if you struggle with things like over-exercise and restricting your food, to go and watch her all-in journey.
Since May of 2019, I gave myself unconditional permission to eat and fuel my body properly. I went all in and ended the perpetual cycle of dieting, and I allowed my body to relearn how to feel full and satisfied.
After watching her journey, I realized that I myself actually went through a period of being all in, even though I didn't know that was what it was called at that time. I just want to caveat here, I don't think there is anything wrong with wanting to change your body purely for the aesthetics. I'm just saying that I think it's important to approach it with the right mindset. If you want to change how your body looks to the extent that you would do anything to reach that goal, even if it means harming your health, that is what I don't agree with. So ask yourself frankly, will you exercise, eat healthy, or insert activity here if it wouldn't change the way you looked at all? If your answers are no, it means that you have to do a little bit more work to really reprogram your mind to focus on health rather than aesthetics. Number 3, ditch the scale, the steps, the calories, ditch the metrics that determine your health. Start listening to your body instead. I read a news article recently that really helps me to summarize this point, so I'm just going to read it out. Does this constant monitoring of our vital signs truly yield better health? A review in the American Journal of Medicine found little indication that wearable devices that track health metrics provide a benefit for health outcomes. As with weighing yourself on a scale, or calculating your BMI, or measuring your step goals, it is easier to read a number than it is to know instinctively whether you're healthy. But you cannot quantify your way to good health. The reality is much harder. Relying on all this self-quantification can interfere with our ability to know our own bodies. Once you outsource your well-being to a device and convert it into a number, it stops being yours. The data stands in for self-awareness. It is an extension of our hustle-oriented culture. Instead of learning what your body feels like, you have a number. We can become fixated on these devices and on these numbers in a way that is akin to addiction. Again, let me caveat that I'm not saying that these external metrics have no benefit at all. I myself like to check my steps just to see if I've been too stagnant throughout the week. But I've made it a point to check in more with my body than aiming to meet these benchmarks. I don't force myself to walk 10,000 steps every day if my calf muscles are aching. Just like I'm fine with eating more than my supposed daily calorie intake if I'm feeling extra hungry that day. And trusting your body takes time after you've spent years ignoring things like your hunger signals or your muscle strains after exercise. But I strongly believe that learning to trust my body again was one of the most vital things I could have done to have a more healthy relationship with food and exercise. Mindset shift number 4. Clothes are supposed to fit you, and not you fit your clothes. When I came back from the States, I was a little bit bigger than I was when I first left, and I think one of the biggest turning points for me to really learn to accept my bigger body was just to go out and buy clothes that fit me instead of trying to squeeze into clothes that were now too small for me. Your clothes should make you feel good about yourself. It should be another way that you can express yourself. So try to find clothes that make you feel confident and allow you to highlight parts of yourself that you like. When I was younger, I always bought things that I liked on the rack but actually didn't really look good on me, or I didn't feel entirely comfortable in. For example, I spent years trying to pull off singlets and other sleeveless tops, even though I was really quite insecure about my shoulders and my arms. Now I've learned how to dress according to my body type and also for comfort. And if my body changes again in the future, I will change my style to suit it again. So don't bash yourself up for not fitting into your clothes anymore or not looking as good in your clothes now as you did in the past. You can always change your style. You can always change your clothes. Remember, clothes are supposed to fit you and not the other way around. Number 5, stop following fitness influencers. I know a lot of people follow fitness influencers because it's supposed to motivate them to eat healthier and exercise more. That is what I did a lot of back in the day as well. But in my personal experience, it can really backfire because number 1, you might just end up comparing your own body to the fitness influencers' bodies, and number 2, what the fitness influencer is recommending that you do in terms of exercise and food might not be what you need for yourself. I understand the value that fitness influencers provide. Beyond motivation, they can also give you clearer ideas on how to approach your workouts or your diet. But if you're someone who is struggling with body image issues, I really recommend that you don't follow them. As someone who spent many of my younger years binging diet and fitness YouTube videos, I can honestly tell you I did not learn much. All it did was make me think non-stop about how to achieve a certain look every minute of every day. I do honestly believe that there are some really good fitness influencers with a very healthy approach to diet and exercise, such as Natasha Ocean and Stephanie Buttermore. But you need to ask yourself honestly whether following these people is actually helping you or just reinforcing negative thought patterns about food and exercise. And if the answer is yes, then I think it is time to unfollow. Number 6, most people aren't looking at or judging how you look. It's just your perception. Think about the last time that you saw a few friends or the last couple of people that you interacted with. Do you remember what they wore? Do you remember what they looked like? Do you remember anything physically about them? I'm guessing probably not. And if yes, it was probably just a passing thought and nothing judgmental or mean. My point is this: nobody cares about how you look as much as you. And what I realize now is that back when I had negative perceptions of my body, I always was finding flaws with it, no matter how much weight I lost or how fit I became. I remember looking back recently at some of my old photos and thinking that I was so skinny back then, but I remember when I was that age, feeling like I wasn't skinny enough. That was such a turning point for me because it made me realize that my perception of myself is just based on my present beliefs. It's not a fact and it can be changed. Let me caveat this by saying that of course there are some people who will also comment on your weight. Honestly, these people are also people with unhealthy mindsets around body image. So do your best to surround yourself with more supportive individuals who don't ever talk or comment about weight or appearance. Try your best to stay away from people who trigger you or your negative thought patterns about food, your body, or exercise. If they are your family members, tell them honestly that they're hurting you with their comments. You might have noticed that up till now I have not commented at all about how I personally exercise or eat. And that's because I think that everyone takes such a different approach to this. It took many years of trial and error for me to figure out what worked for me, and I encourage you to do the same and also to be flexible with yourself and allow yourself to experiment with and maybe move on to different exercise routines and diets depending on what suits you at any point in time. Honestly, I think food and exercise is not as complicated as it seems. It's really quite simple. These are some basic principles that I live by. First of all, for exercise, moving my body as often as I can whilst respecting its need for rest and recovery. What this means is like moving between 3 to 6 times a week depending on how you're feeling, and really just picking any form of exercise that you enjoy. It can be hiking, it could be swimming, it could be walking, it could be weightlifting, it could be playing a sport. I think as long as you enjoy it and as long as you move your body, that is enough. This will probably change over time as well depending on your physical capabilities. For food, it's also relatively simple. I eat as little processed food as I can. I eat at home maybe like 80% of the time and go out 20% of the time. I will usually try and load up on greens, fruits, whole grains, and whole foods. And I will also try and make half of my plate vegetables and the other half protein and a whole complex carbohydrate. But I'm not too strict with this when I'm on holiday. I eat out all the time when I'm on holiday, and I just chillax. I allow myself to have the dessert when I feel like it. And the more I've listened to my body, the easier it is to just stop when I feel full and recognize when I need to have a healthy meal to counterbalance maybe a not so healthy meal or week. Of course, everything I've said in this video up to this point will take patience and time and effort. Please give yourself grace and be kind to yourself. I mean, it took me so many years to get to this point. As I said, 9 entire years, which is nearly half of my life. And that's because we live in a society that ingrains certain beliefs about, as I said, what we should or should not look like into our heads. So of course, it will take time to rewrite those scripts. I really hope that this video has been helpful for you guys, and if you've made it here, thank you again so much for watching. With that, I'll see you guys in next week's video coming real soon. Bye!